try and get more information from what's going on the ground in Gaza. We know it's been 10 days of Israeli bombing, and now, of course, this horrific hospital attack. Israel says it's not responsible for, but as you heard from Dr. Suleiman, not many people in the Arab world believe that at all. I'm joined now by Tomasso Della Longo of the International Federation of the Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies. Good evening, and thank you so much for joining us. I understand that you have lost 5 medics in the region. I wonder if, first of all, condolences, and this is so very tragic. I wonder if you could just tell us a little bit more about those incidents.
Of course, good evening, and thanks for having me today. Well, unfortunately, the number grew up, so we lost 7 members of our family, 3 volunteers of the Magen David Adom in Israel, our national society in Israel, at the beginning of the conflict in the first weekend, while they were carrying with their ambulances patients to the hospital. And then we lost during the week in 2 different incidents 4 paramedics of the Palestine Crescent in Gaza, again in ambulances, and again ending up in the line of fire. And I think that is really a stark reminder of how the level of this conflict, the level of violence reached a point that is not, of course, acceptable. And again, humanitarian workers, healthcare workers are protected under international humanitarian law. This is not only a legal obligation, I would say it's a moral obligation. And international humanitarian law was written to give hope and light also in the worst time for human beings, which are the armed conflicts. And this is very important to underline that even war have rules to respect.
Do you have information coming to you after the hospital bombing last night? We've just been chatting to humanitarian Dr. Imtiaz Suleiman, who says that he's hearing as many as 800 people have died. Israel says that the numbers are being overestimated. What are you hearing about the number of casualties?
Well, I would say that with the number of casualties also is always complicated. I can tell you what I heard from our colleagues of Palestine Crescent, who were immediately after on the scene with their ambulances, with their paramedics, and it was an horrific scene. I mean, we were all deeply horrified and shocked by what has happened. And I mean, it's something that no one would ever want to see. I mean, hospitals, we need to underline it, hospitals are sanctuaries. And also hospitals, this hospital in particular, as all the others in Gaza Strip, are not only hosting, of course, doctors and nurses, injured and patients, but also hundreds of people who seek the refuge inside hospitals, thinking correctly that hospitals are protected and probably the safest place in every part of the world. And this was not the case yesterday, and we are really deeply concerned about the safety of hospitals and medical workers. And this is why we are calling on all the parties to adhere to the international humanitarian law obligation and respect civilians and hospitals. And just to give you an example, Palestine Crescent teams are running 2 hospitals in Gaza City, in Gaza Strip. One is in Gaza City. They were asked 3 times to evacuate, and for 3 times they refused. Why they refused? Because they don't have any any logistic to evacuate babies in incubators or people in ICU unit, and they just said, we cannot leave behind patients, we cannot leave behind our people. And of course, again, we are deeply concerned, and we call all the parties to respect hospitals and healthcare workers.
Does the Federation of Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies have a view on whether this was a deliberate attack or an accident?
No, I think that these are all details that needs to be gathered. And then, of course, there are different organizations with different mandates rather than us to talk about this. Our main point here is to get access, to get a safe and unhindered access in the Gaza Strip as everywhere. And this is why, I mean, our main concern at the moment is to have the Rafah border at the south of the Gaza Strip bordering with Egypt open, and to have all the possible efforts to bring much needed humanitarian aid in Gaza Strip. The situation is catastrophic. There is shortages of food, of water. There are not anymore medicines. There is not anymore fuel. And fuel for hospital means lacking of electricity. And if you don't have electricity, you cannot run surgeries. You cannot give electricity to incubators for baby. And this is, of course, something that we cannot accept. And this is why we deeply want to have safe and unhindered access to the Gaza Strip.
With even water supply a problem, how long is it going to be before we see massive infections? How long before you as a federation say we have to pull our people out. I mean, is that an option? Would you consider pulling your people out?
Well, I mean, the main point here is that we typically work through our national society, in this case, the Palestine Crescent. Our volunteers, our staff members are a member of their societies, and this is probably the added value, and also why in every single crisis in the world you will see a Red Cross on a Red Crescent jacket. These are women and men that are trained to respond to every emergency. Of course, no one really thought as a large-scale crisis like this one. But these people are part of the community. And as I said, they refused to leave an hospital in this impossible dilemma of putting yourself in a safe place, but leaving your patient, or risking also your life, but not leaving your patient. So I think that our Palestine Crescent teams will stay with their own communities, will continue the humanitarian mandate, but then it's an imperative for all the international community, for regional actors, for every stakeholder to respect humanitarian aid, to respect healthcare workers, to respect hospitals, and of course to respect civilians. And this is what we will continue calling on all the parties.
Thank you so much for that update. And let's hope that early reports we're hearing that US President Joe Biden has managed to secure an agreement that Israel will hold off on bombardments and create a humanitarian corridor. Let's hope that really does materialize. Thank you so much for your time this evening. Tomasso Della Longo of the International Federation of the Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies telling us that 7 members of their teams in that region have now been killed in the conflict. Still to come.